Mr. Chairman. So I think the metric that matters here isn't what day of the week these schools meet. It's not how long they meet. The metric is student success, right? And so ultimately, I introduced myself to this committee and this subcommittee, and I'll tell you that I believe in the nature versus nurture argument in nurture. I believe in nurture. I believe that no child, regardless of their national origin, regardless of the skin color, regardless of their parents' socioeconomic status or educational attainment, is more able to succeed or fail than another. But that if the child is placed in a circumstance where the child can succeed and encouraged and given the appropriate instruction, that the child will in all likelihood succeed. And I believe that there is a fundamental entitlement that Americans can expect. One fundamental entitlement, and that is opportunity. And I see children being left behind every single day by virtue of circumstances beyond their control, and that is a zip code. That's a parent who loves their child no differently than I love my own, but who doesn't have the financial wherewithal to place themselves in a circumstance where they can assure their children that best educational opportunity. And we had this fight again and again during my time in the state legislature, and there one party said, look, we have really good public schools except for where we don't, and we need to ensure that the young people in those areas also have an opportunity. Are the children failing those schools? No, the schools are failing the children. I understand there's a plethora of inputs, socioeconomic status, educational attainment of parents, et cetera, so forth and so on. But if we know to a metaphysical certainty that in one zip code schools are failing, then shouldn't we change how we do business? So I would, Mr. Chairman, direct my questions at this juncture to Ms. Cherry. Ms. Cherry, you were, in fact, your children were in public school in Pasco County.
Yes, sir.
And you were happy, very happy, with the outcomes that your children were seeing in Pasco County, your husband, Demetrius, and yourself.
That is correct.
And we've heard conjecture that people might flee public schools if these opportunities are made available, but you only left those public schools in Pasco County after financial calamity beyond your control struck your family, am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You would have remained in those schools with which you were happy.
That is correct.
And so had Florida not had a system wherein I believe, 79,000 young people receive scholarship opportunities, your children would be in school where?
I'm not sure, because when it was time to enroll, we didn't have a permanent address, so I'm really not sure.
But ultimately, you ended up at Tampa Bay Christian.
Correct.
Do you feel that the educational opportunities afforded to was it 3 or 4 children?
There's 4.
4 children at Tampa Bay Christian are sufficient for them to be able to live successful lives here in the United States of America?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And this was made possible because somebody in Florida decided to break from the status quo and think outside the box?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so if somebody hadn't, can you say with any certainty whatsoever that your children would be receiving what I would argue they're entitled to, which is the opportunity provided by a solid education?
I couldn't say that.
Okay, thank you. I talk too fast. Mr. Williams, I would move my questioning to you. Ultimately, we look a lot at per pupil expenditures. And what I've seen from the studies that I've reviewed in my previous legislative experience in much smaller format was that the per pupil expenditure does not decrease commensurate to the number of individuals who leave a school. In essence, that if we're funding a particular school to the tune of $12,000 per pupil and a pupil leaves, that only a percentage of that funding leaves with that pupil. Is that accurate? So, but if the average per pupil expenditure is $12,000, and let's say that $6,000 follows the student, the money follows the child, then that leaves a surplus at the school from whence the child came in most instances. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so ultimately then what we have is, if resources are the question, a greater number of resources per pupil as that child is subtracted from the total number of children in the school.
Quite possible.
And so if you could help me, because I'm completely missing something here, what would the argument against having a greater per pupil resource base at what had some parent might have identified as a school not providing their child an opportunity, what would the argument against that greater per pupil resource base be? I'm missing it.
I can't help you much with that one. I think it's just simply a fundamental philosophical difference in the allowing folks to move to private schools.
And so, Mr. Chairman, I got about 15 seconds. Ultimately, though, I'd ask Mr. Kubacki, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, should the goal not be that every child receives the education they need to have the potential to succeed in this nation?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you,
Wonderful,
Mr. Chair.
yes.